All right, guys, welcome to the third episode of the Unfiltered Agent. And I have one of my dear friends in the business, Steven Burk, here. He is one of my favorite realtors in Tampa for so many reasons.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my second podcast. I kind of love this.
It's awesome. Today's episode is all about the consumer and how in the heck you should be thinking and approaching picking a real estate agent. Because, guys, there's some bad eggs out there, and it is not always easy to tell the good ones from the bad ones. So, Steven, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to dive right into this topic.
So my name is Steven Burk. I am a Tampa native, and I am an agent with Keller Williams. Not Your Boring Agent's my brand. I try to stay true to that. You never know what you're gonna get with me. So when I was invited on this podcast, I was like, okay, like I hope it's. I'm like, she like the title. It's an Unfiltered Agent, and I'm like, this is the podcast that I want to do. I'm a Tampa agent. I specialize in condos and mainly just working my sphere. I have a really great network of people. And I kind of just cover all over. I do whatever, my sphere tells me to go.
Well, one of the things I love about you and the way you run your business and why I wanted to have you specifically on this show to discuss this topic is because you are a great realtor. And I think you really pride yourself in excellence in every aspect of your business. And you're someone I definitely admire and have always looked up to, just from how you present your listings to how you treat your people when they're going on tours with you. I mean, I remember you doing crazy stuff when you're like, I have this, like, you gift bags of people and they go on tours and you're like giving them snacks. I'm like, who does that? Steven does that. But anyway, so I wanted to have him on this show today to talk to you guys exactly how to not get screwed in your next deal by picking the right person to work with. Because unfortunately, I know a lot of you guys may not be in Tampa where you can hire Steven or me to help you with your next deal. And we want to make sure that you're going to make good decisions and not have bad real estate experiences, because we have seen a lot of things and it's scary when you don't have the right representation. So one of the things I wanted to do is kind of go back at some different times in my career when I've had really bad people on the other side of a transaction. And I've had this one experience, I guess it was like maybe 2 years ago, where it was probably one of the worst examples of a buyer who had the worst realtor of all time. My client was an investor. I was a listing agent. So I was actually just representing him in the sale. I had an agent who showed a house, sent an offer in. It was pretty straightforward. It wasn't anything weird. They did their home inspection. They did the appraisal. We were waiting on the appraisal to come back. I get a phone call at 9:00 at night, and they called like several times, and then they text me, please call me. I'm the buyer at so-and-so listing, that you're the listing agent. I need help. It's urgent. And this is awful. I hope everything's okay with this person. And she calls me and she's like, I have not been able to reach my real estate agent for the last 5 days. Like, I have no idea where they went. Well, have you tried emailing her? Have you called her? What have you done to try and get in touch with her? And she was explaining to me that she had not even met this woman in person. When she showed the house, she met her through Zillow, right? And when she had done her little inquiry, because a lot of people do that when they're first starting to buy a house, they'll go on Zillow and they'll try and like get a showing, because obviously people like, they don't necessarily want to commit to a realtor, but they want to go shop. So they'll go on Zillow, schedule a showing. So that's what this couple had done. And this woman had contacted them, but she didn't actually go show the house. She just scheduled it, gave them the code to go in my listing by themselves, and then wrote the offer and sent it to me. And by the way, guys, if an agent ever does that, that is highly illegal to do that. That's basically against every code of ethics in the book to let a buyer go in a property. It's the worst nightmare for a listing agent and a seller to know that complete, absolute strangers are walking into your listing, with nobody to be there. The realtor's supposed to be there to protect interest of the seller in protecting their property, but also to like help consult the buyer, because they don't know, they may not know what to do, and they shouldn't be in there by themselves. Anyway, this lady was distraught. So it turns out I'd called her broker. The agent had gone to the freaking Dominican Republic for 2 weeks and had not told anyone. She hadn't told her broker. She hadn't told her clients. And so I called the broker and made her aware of all these things. And like, it was a nightmare. That's like the worst thing that could happen, I think, that's happened to me recently. My client was super upset. The seller was super upset that someone had gone in the property without, knowing. But at that time, he was an investor and he used coded boxes. And so a lot of us do use the blue boxes for that particular reason. But
I have a lot to piggyback off of that. I think my biggest thing is that I always say good markets have made bad agents.
That's
and true. We, after, the past couple of years of what we experienced, people were getting their license and it was easy. And so now we have to have these difficult conversations. We have to have this stuff. And that's why we're here today. We want to be that resource for people to let them know there's going to be a separation. I was at a real estate conference over the past couple of days, and 30% of agents are going to be getting out of the business within the next 18 months.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel like it's going to be sooner because when your real estate dues are due, and you got to pay for another year, it's either they're interested or committed to being a real estate agent. So you want to find a committed agent that you're going to work with. And if you're just having, nothing against hobby realtors is what I call them. It's just, that's probably what that agent was that you dealt with, is that there were a hobby realtor and they, didn't really care. And you do manage Airbnbs and you do all this stuff, giving out a lockbox code. Holy cow. That is like the worst nightmare because there's so much fraud out there. I had a combo lockbox and I always will meet someone there. I never put a combo lockbox on there. The reason why I put a combo lockbox was because we were still doing renovations inside and updating the property. I met this lady there at the rental property and I opened up the door for her and she says she lost $2,800. She went online and she found on Facebook Marketplace, she found a rental listing and she ended up getting a lockbox code from someone, went to the property. She was like, oh, this is perfect. She went, did an online application. They sent her a fake lease. She ended up wiring the money to them. Okay. Not only did the person take her money, took her identity.
Wow.
Took her identity. And so you have to not only be conscious of that, but also have, as a consumer, you just don't know what you're getting into. You think this is legit. You think that's it. And that's why whenever you're trying to do a private rental, you need to have representation. It's super important with that. And it's not just in the sales part of it. It's definitely very, very scary to be out there and have those agents that are unresponsive. And you need to find that committed agent.
We were talking earlier today about this, like how do people actually go about finding their real estate agent? And there's like a couple different ways. One we just talked about was some horror stories from people who've just gone online and tried to get support to find their house on their own. But a lot of people, they'll do open house hopping and meet someone. Maybe they have a family member or a relative or their brother's wife is a real estate agent. And then they have this like moral obligation to like use somebody that they just know and maybe don't give it a whole lot of thought. And I see the consequences of that come up so often in transactions where, maybe I've shown somebody a couple houses and then I get a phone call. Oh, well, my brother's daughter just got her real estate license and, we really want to support her business. So we're going to have to use her for our real estate purchase, or the same thing for a listing. I had a couple clients who, I worked for them on other deals and helped them buy and sell homes. And then his brother got his real estate license and they ended up listing the house with him. And then they're calling me every, 2 days, like, what is this? Is this right? I don't understand. What is this? And I'm like, okay. But I think people do feel a lot of pressure and like moral obligation sometimes when they have a close family member or friend that's got and they don't necessarily in the moment think about their financial consequences for not using an expert agent, or they don't really know what they don't know to even go and interview people. Like, what should they be asking? Why is it important? Because some people are just scared to offend someone. I really think that's part of it too.
It's not offending people. So cheap is expensive. When you go, especially now we have to have these buyer consultations because of the NAR settlement, which I'm sure we're going to get into.
A little bit, yeah,
but
for sure.
But cheap is expensive. And if you're looking at, something and they're blah, 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 and you have your family that's going to give you a credit. I always tell my clients, I would love to work alongside that. And I'm willing to share my commission with your aunts, uncles, brothers, cousins,
Right.
coworker.
Or pay them a referral.
Or pay them a referral. But I'm more on the educational standpoint where I come from a place of value always. I know you come from a place of value always. We're on the same wavelength with that. But I'm always like, let's join forces and let me kind of guide you through this process. And that way you know what you're getting into. They know that you're there.
Yeah.
And they're making everyone happy. They're
win-win.
Yes, it's a win for either side. You have to have that balance.
Right.
You have to have that balance.
And some people, unfortunately, don't have a Steven in their life who is willing to work or partner with, their cousin Terry, who has a real estate license to help protect your clients, protect your friends, look out for what's best for them. Sometimes you're not going to have that. So you're going to have to actually, make that hard choice. Am I going to use Uncle Terry or am I going to go and interview other people? So I've seen this happen a lot, and it's always this drama for my friends and family. Like, especially here in Florida, we have more real estate agents in Florida than any other state. Like, I think I looked at the statistics. We have like 228,000 realtors. So, and there's just 12,000 in Polk County alone where I live. And there's way more than that in Tampa. Yeah. I get it. Everybody knows about 20 agents. And it's like, which one do I pick when you have so many options, right? And especially when you have friends and family who are like, am I going to piss them off by not using it? So my recommendation is, if you're someone who knows other agents that you're close with, but you're not necessarily sure that they're going to be the best expert to help you, don't bring up the fact that you're going to look at houses or you're thinking of listing your home. Go and interview several other experienced people that other people you trust have used, and do your due diligence. That way, when you actually decide to use Lisa or your cousin Terry, you made that decision by looking at other options. And so you have context, because if you don't know what other options or what other services agents are going to be able to provide you, you don't know if working with your Uncle Terry is actually a good deal or not. That's my opinion. What do you think?
I agree. So that's why when I started this conversation, I was like, I am a Tampa native, and my I work off of the people around me.
Yes.
Because my entire business is pretty much all referrals. Same. It's all people that know, love, and trust me. They know that I'm the knowledge broker. They know that I'm full-time. They know that I'm getting all the right information. And so it's like, I treat my business like a business. It's not a hobby. And it's the same thing when you're going out there and you see, a dentist, or you see an attorney, they put a lot of time and effort into studying and doing that. To get your license, it's kind of easy compared to other, professions. And you have to do the work in order to be that good agent and to really know and have that skill set. And like, she just came back from DC, and I just came back from Orlando we both came back from 3 different conferences, and we just had a little collab. But we invest our time, our money, we travel, we go and do stuff because we want to be that person that protects you. I kind of get emotionally slutty with my clients. Okay. Like, you have to be emotionally slutty. You have to be financially slutty. You have to really lay it out there. Like, yes. I want to know the full scope of really what's going on, because that helps me, helps you, helps agents really know what the client wants. I want to protect my client because it is an investment. And people, it's not just opening a door and showing a pretty kitchen. This is an investment for someone. So I like to get a game plan. What is your long-term goals? What are your short-term goals? Why are you buying this house? I take those clues because I, know the right questions to ask in order for that to be a success of them being able to purchase a home. Having those questions helps you bring something to their attention that they might not even know. I do a lot of probate cases where, someone has passed away, they don't have a will, they don't have a trust. And now if someone, like my first time home buyers, their parents, are most of the time interjected into that transaction. There was back-to-back showing appointments. I represented the buyer, and the listing agent was there opening the door for allowing a couple of different people in. And she heard me having a conversation about having a will, having a trust, having some of these things. And, they're like in their early 20s. And they're like, we never thought about this. And I said, well, this is a really big investment. I want to make sure that you're protected, not only with just purchasing this house, but what happens if something happens to you? You're buying this with your significant other. They just got married. Things happen. 2 years ago, I just had a heart attack at 29 years old. That helped me change my perspective of helping my clients, because I was like, you know what? I need to get my ducks in a row. And if I can provide that extra layer of value, well, that agent said, as I was walking out, she said, I cannot believe that you had that conversation with your clients. I would never get involved in that. And I said, well, everyone handles their business differently. Okay. And I have built a good relationship with my clients. They know, love, and trust me. I know a little bit more of a deeper, information about their personal life because I asked those right questions. And I felt that was important for them to be able to have that extra little nugget.
Everybody should have a will. If you're buying a house, you should have a will. If you have kids, you should have a will. If you're any kind of like mature adult, you should have a will. And understanding how that works. That's just you wanting to support your client. Like, I don't see what's wrong with that. Is it just maybe she was intimidated by the fact that you knew about that?
Well, I mean, I don't really know, nor do I care, to be honest.
Right.
But it's easy. Just go on LegalZoom, print off something, sign it. You're going to be in front of a notary on closing day. Like, take advantage of that notary. They can just notarize it there for you the same time, and at least protect yourself a little bit. Always think about the options, and that's why getting back to finding the right agent is difficult, because we have so much noise right now. Everyone is on their phones. They're scrolling. They're seeing things. And there's so many different factors. You go online and then you see, people pulling up in these luxury cars with their Louboutins and this and that. And then you really see, like, they just got their license and they think that they're selling Sunset. Yes. And it's not.
They ain't selling shit.
It's, yeah. Yes. It's putting on that perception. And so when you're going as a consumer and you're like, oh, wow, they really they look like they're doing.
They look successful. You can trust but verify. Ricky said that last week when it came to picking a lender. You can be interested in someone, but actually before you schedule a showing, have a real conversation with them and ask them about their experience. Ask them what they specialize in. How long have they been doing it? How well supported are they within their brokerage to be, if, they're not that experienced, what are they going to do to help you be successful? Like, dig into those things. I don't think people do that at all when it comes to picking a realtor. I think they legit just fall into one most of the time. And it scares me. It scares me really a lot, especially with all the stuff coming up with NAR and all these big changes that are happening that will dramatically impact the consumer experience. Like, they're going to dramatically impact the consumer experience because you're not going to be able to just trust that the seller is going to pay your buyer's agent anymore. So now, if you're going to have to be coming out of pocket potentially, or maybe even financing a commission for a buyer into the loan, you're going to want to know that what you're getting something for what you're paying for, right? Like, and before, people haven't even had to have that conversation. Like, we haven't even had to do real buyer's agency agreements until this new thing's passed in Florida. Yep. So it's huge.
It is huge. And that's why 30% of agents are getting out of the market.
Because they don't know how to even do a buyer consultation.
Yes. And that's the main thing, though, is that when you go online, and I always get this, okay? I have done online leads, and there's nothing against it. I did that.
Yeah, I do Zillow as well. Like, I get great clients from that, but I'm also a professional. So
yes.
It's a difference.
Yes, there is. So I did that. But now, people think that when they're going on Zillow, they're getting the listing agent.
So yes, 100%.
And that's where I think people think that they're going to get a deal. They're going to get something better because they're going to the listing agent direct. And in Florida, it's different per state, but we turn into a transaction broker here. And, we always have a form that we sign and an addendum of stating that we become a transaction broker and all that. But it's, once again, you have to verify that information, that you found the agent, you connected with them, had a great conversation. but just kind of know what you're getting into. And I think the right questions to ask from a consumer is not how many houses you've sold, how well have you sold those houses? Read those reviews. It's much more than opening a door and writing a contract. You have to have vendors. My home inspector, having a good home inspector, huge thing. Insurance agents.
Yes. In
right
Florida,
now,
yes.
you need to have a kick-ass insurance agent because that insurance goes into your mortgage, and that can really affect a little bit of your purchase price, or can affect a little bit of your underwriting. So having those kind of contacts, and then right now, 17 years, you need a new roof. So I have a roofer, that can put the roof on and then finance it into your mortgage for you. You just raise the sale price a little bit. You put in the cost of the new roof, and then you know that you're good. You're not having to come out of pocket that. But that's a skill set.
It comes from experience and time in the business. So even if you're going to work with a new agent, as long as if you trust them and they're a great professional. Me and Steven both started somewhere, right? We didn't come out the gate selling hundreds of houses like where we are now. But he and I both always aligned ourselves with really great agents that we've learned from in the business that helped us get to where we are. And we've been able to pass that down. So, for example, if you're moving to a new city, say you're coming to Lakeland or you're moving to Tampa, and which we would love that, and you decide you want to shop around, you're not going to necessarily just pick us to help you, but that's okay. And you don't have personal people here with a recommendation to give, right? You don't have friends and family who've used the same realtor 5 times and they can vouch for them and they're going to treat you right, treat you well. You're going to be protected. The things I think are most important to ask is, what would a buyer experience be like? Are you be able to show me when I'm actually available to look at houses? That's a big thing, because you may call an agent who is maybe number one in the market and you want to go see properties with them, but if they're fully loaded, in a schedule, that might not work, for you if you're coming in and you're relocating. You want to make sure that they have experience with the kind of houses that you're interested in buying, and that they've got the vendors that you're going to need. And I would also open it up to, what kind of questions do they ask you? Are they even asking you questions? Do they have a system that they're going to guide you through to onboard you as a new client? Do they actually do a buyer consult, or are they just going to right out the gate go ahead and just start showing houses and sling you around town? It's a very personal experience, and you'll tell right away, I think, or at least I can, when I'm working with an agent, the level of professional they are by how they handled that initial contact and that onboarding of that new client. Not every agent has a process for that.
And it's, our business is very process oriented. It's not just result oriented, and you have to know you have a skill set of things that help you navigate those objections and overcome that stuff and problem solve. There's a lot of problem solving that goes on in our business.
When I get a new client as a buyer or a seller, I actually have a whole form that I have them fill out that really, see, great minds. Anyway, I've been doing it for years. I've been doing it for probably 6 or 7 years, because I was finding that in these buyer consults, I'm chatty catty. Okay. I like to talk about you. I want to know how your vacations were that I saw you doing on Facebook. And I'm like, well, how's the kids? How's the wife? What's going on? I like to be very relational because I love my clients. I genuinely love my clients, and I don't want to miss anything really important. I don't want to forget to ask you a really important question. And I didn't want to be sitting there with a notebook. So I actually send it prior to the buyer consult or the listing consult, and it's a list of questions that are super important and maybe even a little uncomfortable to answer face to face, right? What do you think is most important in your experience of buying this home, and what expectations do you have out of the agent you're going to work with? Is there anything holding you back right now that you feel would be financially hindering you from moving forward in a transaction? Do you have a lender you've worked with? Do you want a recommendation for that? What kind of countertops do you like? What kind of color schemes do you like? All these things they can sit down with their spouse or their friends or by themselves and just really meditate on to get that introspection. Like you mentioned earlier, a good agent's going to ask you the questions that you didn't even think of, like situations and scenarios like, oh, I didn't even know that was important. Good realtors are going to do that for you. They're going to guide you, and they're going to also be able to help you understand what you need better, whether it's from buying or selling a house.
Trust me, there's a shoe for every foot. Okay.
Heard that.
And sometimes you're not Cinderella. And I went on a listing presentation. Okay. And I gave my whole presentation to them. I sold a house in that same community recently. It was a kind of a very difficult floor plan. It was a very quirky house. It was everything. And I gave them my whole marketing plan because I knew the problem that I had selling that house, that my other prior listing. And so I learned from that to then carry over into this listing. At the end of the consult, they were asking me questions of another agent. Well, I knew the other agent. It's a great agent, wonderful agent. Awesome. But at the end of it, I said, I don't think that our mutual expectations are met. And I said, I think you should really go work with that other agent. I think you align better with that agent. And do you know that they were like taken back by that?
Really?
Yeah, they were like, what?
Why would you say that?
Why would you say that?
Do you not like us?
Well, because you have the best interest of your client.
100%. Exactly.
You know, it's like my entire business is mainly referrals. So I may not get that one quirky listing, you know, even though like my marketing plan may have been better, it may have been a little bit different. I sold the home in that community. The other agent has not. Right. But, you know, I said they're a great agent. And, you know, if there's any advice, do you know that that agent called me and she said, Steven, I heard that you went on a listing appointment for the same listing on X, Y, and Z Banana Street. And she said, they told me that you told them that they should hire me. And I said, well, they should. Like, so awesome. I mean, I'm not in it. I'm looking out for their best interest. And if they feel more comfortable with you, then that's okay. And that's the same thing. It's mutual.
Oh gosh, that's so true.
It's mutual.
And I think that's important. Not only do you need an expert in the industry, but you also need somebody that you jive with, that you feel listens to you, that gets you, that you can have a conversation with, because my boyfriend's also a licensed realtor. And so we see this all the time. He's got a very we both have polarizing personalities, I think. So either I'm one of these people, you love me or you can't stand me because I'm like radiantly positive. And some people really just want get to the facts all the time. They just want to be business all the time. And Ed, he's very domineering. He's very D temperament. He's a driver. And he could speak really well with those people who are very objective based. He doesn't really care about the fluff or the emotional side of things as much as I do. But then there's people like, they need me to love on them. They need me to care about them. They need somebody to sit there and kind of, and literally sometimes hold their hand and be with them and be there for them. And other people just want results, you know, but I can give both, but it's like, who are they going to hear it from? Right.
But that goes back to asking the right questions in your consult. When you're going to a listing appointment or you're going and having a buyer consultation, you set those expectations. Like you said, if your schedules are not aligning and you're not able to show a property, maybe when the buyer's schedule allows, then that's not the right agent for you. Or find another solution for that. I've had clients, especially during the COVID chaos, where they just had to take time off of work. I'm like, you need to take 3 days off of work. We're going to have to just like pack a snack and we're going to find you a house and write an offer, because by the time they got off of work and came, and it was gone. And so that's kind of like the same thing, is that you need to figure out whether both of your values align. And if you're at a consult, you know, buyers don't really know what to ask. The agent needs to be directing those and bringing those things to your attention. And I love that you do that. I do the same thing where before I do a client input sheet, I do a Google Doc that I send to everyone. I do like a little thing, and I'm like, what's your favorite cake? And what's your, favorite coffee drink or whatever. But it's that client experience though. So having an agent that goes beyond, what countertops you want, but getting to know you, getting to know your family. Why are you moving? It's also kind of cool too, because like when I go up to, with a buyer to meet them, I have their Starbucks order in the cup holder. Aww. I have their favorite snacks in the back. I have a little mini fridge. If you need a babysitter, if they're doing a relocation, I'm like, I have a trusted babysitter for you, because, you have to streamline. Sometimes you're like, bam, 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 bam.
This is why he's on the show, because he's the preeminent guy for this.
Well, I'm very like client driven. And
you're all about the experience. And I love that about you. And,
thank you.
And that's one of the things that I've admired and kind of gleaned from over the years, is how much you care about the experience the buyer has or the seller, because you do tons of both, and it's got to be good. It's like, we're not putting crap up ever, like online. Like, if your listing's going up, it's going to look good. It's got to meet our expectations. And I think if more buyers slowed down and truly did their due diligence, interviewed a couple agents, and really took the time to, pause and think. Most people take more time to plan their freaking vacation than they do when it comes to preparing to buy a house or picking a realtor. And they do more research on where they want to go, whether they want to go to Cozumel or Cancun. They do more research on that because it's fun. It's not always fun to really think and process some of these big life decisions, or maybe you don't know how important it is to pick the right person. And you will know when you're in it with a bad one, and then your life is horrible because they won't answer the phone. They don't call you back. You get a text 3 days later. My sister-in-law had this happen on a buyer. She was the listing agent, and I'm training her right now. So we were co-listing that house. The buyer's agent would not call their client back or send the addendum back because he was so inundated with clients, and his assistant was the only one who would engage with us. It was miserable to get anything done. I couldn't imagine being the buyer on that side of that deal when my realtor won't even call me back. There's a 2-day wait time to get you to call me back. Like, and you're under contract with that person. You're stuck with that person. Wouldn't you have liked to know there should have been a sign for something before that? Maybe you could have avoided. Now, you can do all the right things and still have a problem, right? You can still, because we're all human beings, right? We're going to make mistakes, but man, it can make or break. I had another couple this weekend who came to my open house and actually put an offer on one of my listings, and we're under contract now. And their agent's as sweet as she could be, but they had to come to the open house by themselves because their agent was so busy. I mean, that happens. And then it was like, they were freaking out because there's a lot of activity on the property and the agent wasn't calling back. And they're like, can you write the offer? And I'm like, no, calm down. Let's give her a little bit, right? To get back with us. I won't sell the house out from under you or anything. And she ended up getting back to us. But that's why it's so important to understand time expectations, and working with a busy agent is great. You want to be with somebody who has experience, but you also want to work with people who have the time to speak with you. I think that's super important.
Yeah. And then also, like, walk you through the steps. Like, when you're on a buyer consult, you need to set the expectation of not only what you're mutually, but also explain the process. Most people that are first time home buyers, they don't understand the process that it takes. You can't just show a house, write an offer, and close and move in like 3 days. Sometimes it's 30 to 45 days. Thankfully, we're a title state and things are a little bit easier compared to other states. But setting those expectations, like you said, of being able to say, okay, this is what you're expecting. This is when your escrows due. This is your inspection period. Setting those timeframes, then giving. So I send out, an email when I go under contract. I do like a video series. So it's like a drip. It's automatic. I don't
That's
send
really
it
cool.
out, but I pop in the dates and then it sends out the video. And I'm like, you click on it and I explain it. And I started doing that because it alleviates all the phone calls. Like, I'm not 10 o'clock in bed and they're like, what am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing? So it's actually a little selfish, but it also helps, where the buyer, is able to, or the seller, of seeing what the next process is. And that's what's cool. I know last week you had your lender on there, but also partnering with a lender or title company that also does that.
That's so true.
My lender and title company, they send out a text message letting them know you're in underwriting, or, the appraisal came back. Those save so many phone calls,
They save deals too, because they keep your clients in front of what's most important. What do I need to do next? There's nothing worse for the buyer's experience than not knowing what they're supposed to be doing. And not having somebody there to guide them. And that's what the realtor is there for, is to help guide you through the process, manage that transaction, make sure everyone else in the deal is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that they get to achieve the goal, which is close, right? So,
and a good agent will get you to the finish line and you won't even know all the stuff that happened in between. You just like skip. You're like, it's like a little sandwich. Like, the buyer looks like it's going from like the top of the bread to the bottom of the bread, and then the agent's like getting all the meat and all the toppings on it.
Like, they put out literally 10 fires you knew nothing about before you close. And if they're good, that you won't know. When things do come up, they'll be able to handle them for you and just gate you through that without it being a big drama or you losing any money.
Yeah. We met because I always feel like you need to have good relationships with other agents in your market. And I'm grateful that I have great friends that have come from our career. You have to have a certain personality, you have to have a certain thing, and we all kind of like birds of the same feather flock together, like
Sure
find your
thing,
tribe.
yeah.
You surround yourself with good people. And that's why, having those other agent to agent things and knowing, because it helps you, find your clients off market properties, or
Mhm.
if a seller's on the fence and you're, having a buyer and you're just casually talking, you're like X, Y, and Z has this listing or whatever. And having that right network of other agents, of professionals you're working with, also really plays a factor. So, from a buyer standpoint or a listing standpoint, what is your agent's reach? What is their reach? Because marketing is way deeper than surface level when it comes to doing that, or even finding you the right homes. Right now, we're struggling with inventory right now. I had multiple offers on 2 of my listings, and then some other ones, they're sitting, and you see some other stuff. And it's having not only great photography, great videography, you may have brochures, whatever, but when you're posting on social media,
Are the
who,
brokers open
yeah,
even? Like, do you know enough agents in the business that are actually gonna
to show
show
up.
up to support you?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, like, there's been so many multiple offer situations that I've been over the last 3
Mhm.
years that my client won because they saw my offer and my name come in on that contract, and they're like, "We love her. We love working with her. I know this will close. I know that they'll be easy and good to deal with in the transaction because they know my team, that we have a smooth operation, and that,
Mhm.
they're always gonna know where we are in the process."
Mhm.
So matters, man, if you have a good reputation. It doesn't pay to
Yeah.
be a jerk in this
Yeah.
business. Well,
No.
and I think it's gonna be even more important as the NAR rules kind of take effect, and we really have to become better
Yeah.
communicators when it comes to things. So,
But on the same token is that it's not only your having the good reputation with your buyer's agent, it's the people that are behind that transaction as well. So on the listing standpoint, if I have an offer, I'm going to call that mortgage lender to verify that information and to see. So if there's multiple offer situation and we have a great offer and they're all kind of similar and we go and counter back some stuff, there's a difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. And
yes.
sometimes people get that mixed up. And a pre-qualification is just kind of like a soft, thing, put in some of your basic information, and they spit out a letter for you. Pre-approval is they go deep. They pull your credit, they check your W-2s, they check your tax returns, whatever it may be. And so that there's like that meat and potatoes, like it's there. Like
Yep.
they gave all of their information to that
And they
lender.
verified it.
They verified it. That's why, from the listing standpoint of having a good agent, and also from a buyer side. But if we're talking about buyers today, but from
Or
the
we can talk
buyer
about
side,
listing too,
yeah, it's like,
'cause
well, it's double. But like from the buyer standpoint, that's what's important about having that agent that has that for you, because that listing agent is going to call your lender. So it doesn't matter what amazing offer you're going to write. If there's a deciding factor in that case, then that may or make or break the deal.
yeah, having a good local lender with a good reputation of doing good business makes a huge difference. I know for a fact that everyone does this most good listing agents in multiple offer situations will definitely be fact checking your contracts. They'll call your lender, they'll make sure it's legit. They want
Mhm.
to verify your funds. They want to know that it's real because they don't want to go under contract with you and then something happen and fall through, and then because you can lose out on those other multiple offers because those guys are going to move on to other things
Mhm.
very quickly. And if your agent doesn't know how to do that or have the experience to do that, then it can cost you a house, and that sucks.
And I'm seeing more and more now where people, when I'm submitting a showing request, agents are requesting to see a prequal or
Yep.
see a pre-approval
Or proof of funds.
or proof of funds if you're paying cash, because you don't want to disrupt the seller's time if you're not a qualified buyer. And I think that's because of, interest rates are a little bit questionable these
Mhm.
days. So it really, sways that factor of your purchase power too.
Well,
If
yeah.
your interest rate goes up, goes down, and then also explaining ahead of time from a buyer's agent standpoint. As a listing agent, I get so many blind offers. An agent will just
All day
email
long.
me an offer,
All
and
day
I'm
long.
like,
You haven't seen it.
I don't know. No, they maybe saw the property. It's just that they don't even call me and ask me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. What? They like no sight on, like they don't even tell. That happened to me last week on a deal. And the buyers, it was on the buy. This is on the buyer's agent. They did a bad thing by their client because I had gotten an offer on one of my listings at 11 o'clock last Wednesday. I got an offer. I didn't have any other offers. No, and the agents they had all left feedback. Nobody said, hey, I'm writing an offer. So I'm like, I just have the one offer. So we got the offer. We countered the offer. 4 o'clock that afternoon, I get a text from a lady who said, hey, my buyer signed the contract earlier today, but I'm not going to be able to send it in until after 7. I know you showed this yesterday, but in your feedback, you didn't say you were writing an offer on this house, and we just countered and accepted an offer. I'm sorry, but you missed out. And she was so upset. She's like, my buyers have lost out on 3 different properties. This is the 4th property we've lost out on. I'm like, you didn't communicate. I would have waited for her. And done a highest and best, given everybody a fair opportunity to bid on my listing. And her lack of communication for her client cost them the deal. So, guys, listening to this podcast, if you're agent, you're saying, hey, I want to make a bid on this property, make sure they're contacting the listing agent, please, because don't just trust that they're going to do their job. Like, to ask them, hey, did you contact the listing agent to let them know we're going to have, are there any other offers on the table? These are the things that your buyer's agent should be doing before they even write the offer. Are there any other offers on the table? They should be pulling comps for you. I like to do that before I write an offer. They should be, seeing what the seller paid for, doing so much due diligence leading up to that.
The biggest thing is like when I showing a property, my client's like, we love this. I call up the listing agent and I always ask, what does the seller need? What is the seller's time frame? Do they need a lease back? Do they need to sell quickly? What does the seller need? Because you can talk to your client or the buyer and you can write up what you think is a great offer, and it can be polar opposite of what the seller is looking for. As an agent, you're wasting your time writing the offer, and because they're going to counter back and they're going to be like, this is not what we want. And those terms that the seller is looking for may not work for your buyer.
And wouldn't it be better to know that before you go through all that paperwork? It just seems like common sense to me.
But from a buyer standpoint, you start getting emotionally invested. You're like already on like
moved
Pinterest.
In your mind,
yeah. And you're like, okay, we're going to do shiplap on this wall. We're going to do that. And then you're like, before you know it, you're like, oh, well, this
sucks.
Work.
It didn't work out, and your bubbles all popped, and it didn't have to be that way. So it's really important, you guys, as to who you choose to work with. And I know on the first episode of our podcast, if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend going back because it gives a lot of context as to what's coming this year in 2024 with this NAR lawsuit. So NAR is the National Association of Realtors. It's they're the real estate police. Along with the MLS.
Well, because it's more like the regulation.
They just help to make sure. I don't believe you actually have to be a realtor to be a licensed real estate agent. But if you want to be in the MLS, and if the MLS is owned by the Realtors Association, which most real estate MLSs are owned by the Realtors Association, there's only a couple I can even think of that are not. You have to be a member of the Realtors Association. And being in the Realtors Association means you abide by a certain code of ethics and all that good stuff. But basically, the Realtors Association has been sued because they've been accused of fixing commission rates and blah, blah, blah. Go back and watch episode 1 where we give a lot more detail in that and what that actually is. But the effect of this essentially is going to make it to where, because NAR is settling with them and we're going to have to live with the consequences of that. Basically, buyers now could be on the hook to pay the buyer's agent commission, where historically the seller's been paying for that out of the listing agreement when they put it in MLS. And what this is going to mean is that if the buyer's now going to have to pay for that, we really need to be thinking about what that agent is going to do for you. And if you have to pay for them out of pocket, are they going to be worth it if you have to make that big of an investment in someone?
I always look at value of things. It's like when you go into, I like luxury goods. I'm bougie on a budget.
We like nice things.
But when you go to a store and it's expensive, doesn't mean it's good quality.
That's true.
You have to really look at the overall value of your agent and what they're providing you. Because your agent someone will be like, oh, I could do it for less. But that agent that you may pay a tad bit more could save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Or cost you from just getting into a bad house that you had no business buying in the first place because they just wanted to make a commission.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. And well, it's kind of sad. I actually had a really sad listing appointment. I had an elderly couple. They bought their condo, and then the condo fees went up, and the insurance went up, and they're kind of like priced out of their thing. They bought it like 18 months ago. They had an agent who didn't explain. They weren't from Florida, and they had an agent that didn't explain to them, what was going on with insurance and what to expect. And they thought this was going to be their forever home, and unfortunately, it's not now.
They're probably not in a good equity position on that.
They're on fixed incomes, and they're, that kind of situation. And moving is very hard, even if you're younger, but people, move for diamonds, diapers, divorces, so it's kind of like, and deaths. Those are like the 4 like D's of real estate.
Now it's insurance in Florida.
Now we're adding like, I don't know, we're going to make it another D acronym or whatever it is, but it's kind of sad though. And they said that if they would have known that what they were expecting on their renewal and read your HOA and condo docs. That's another thing too.
Yeah. Find out if it has assessments or a CDD or any of those things.
Read the meeting minutes. Every HOA or condo, they have to keep track of their meeting minutes. And usually, even though those assessments or whatever has not hit yet, you get an insight as to what was discussed in prior meetings. And
so smart, Steven.
And you have to understand that. And if the agent just took a moment to say, let's read the meeting minutes, let's look at the HOA. And for me too, is when clients are scared to make this investment, especially first time home buyers, they're like, it's a commitment, it's a big commitment. Even for me buying my first property, I was scared. I was like, oh my gosh.
I talked about that on my last podcast.
I'm like shaking as I'm signing. But I was like, the worst thing is that I always look at rental comps, because I'm like, the worst case scenario is look at rental comps. You know what to expect, and you can just rent your proproperty out.
True. Yeah.
Or call you and just Airbnb it.
Yeah, if your HOA allows that. But
yeah, if your HOA.
There's always if you a home is not a lifetime commitment unless you want it to be. There's always going to be some option typically, but a good realtor will keep you from getting into a situation where you can't get out of it, or like what you were just saying, like not explaining future costs. That was something that me and Ricky went into in last week's episode when we were talking about lending and financing. Understanding what future costs look like. For example, there's a community here in Lakeland. I won't say the name of the community because a lot of you probably know what I'm talking about if you're listening to this. Okay, you don't even.
I already know.
So what happened is everyone they built in this new community beautiful homes, and these people got what they thought was an incredible deal. And when you buy a new construction house, they're going to assess you for your taxes and insurance, and you escrow, meaning you put money when you close into an account for next year's tax bill. Mm-hmm. And your payments are based on the estimated taxes for what the seller paid prior. Well, if you're building a new home and there was no house there the year prior, it was just a vacant lot. So what do you think the tax bill was? It was very low, right? Very low. So what these people did, they bought these new houses with these really cheap, low mortgage payments because the taxes were like $300, $600. And the next year they get reassessed. And God forbid you forgot to file homestead exemption on top of it. Some people have been getting, and this has been the last 3 years going on now, they've been getting tax bills where their escrows were short. And so now their payments have gone up by $1,000, $400, $500 a month. And now they can no longer afford, and they can't sell the house because now that the new tax rate is there, and there's also CDD fees on top of that as well. So you've got high taxes now, a CDD fee, which is basically where when they build a new subdivision, they pass on construction costs of like roads and infrastructure and things to the buyers, and it attaches to that property for like 30 years or whatever. So it's
30 years.
30 years, yeah. And then until they add new ones. All that stuff is a cost that needs to be explained to a buyer, right? So if you're buying a house in Florida or in other areas of the country, those are important to know when you're moving into a community, especially a new community. Yeah. And those people did not have that explained. They signed those contracts, bought those houses, and there's been so many go up in that community that have just sat on the market because nobody can afford to buy. They're completely, it's like having a car that you're completely upside down in. And that's what's happened for these people.
And the biggest, you touched on that. People think that you go to a builder in a community and you don't need representation from a buyer, from a buyer's agent.
Those people who bought in that community wish they had a realtor tell them, like, crying.
Yes. So a lot, I get that quite a bit. And, you know, people will go to a new construction development and they're going to walk into the sales office and they're going to be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. You see the house and you're going to sign a contract. The builder's contract is written in favor of the builder. They're not going to be really looking out for your buyer's best interest. It's a stack. It's not like our FAR bar contract that we do. The builder makes all of these, you know, extra add-ons to this from other people's experiences, and they've learned to cover their ass.
Yeah, they're trying to avoid litigation. They want to keep your escrow deposit. They're going to CYA themselves. They do not care about you.
Yep. And so that's another thing. And I love a good blue tape walkthrough.
Oh, yeah. And people who don't get home inspections on new construction blows my mind.
No, I do it. Do you do it from like foundation? Like
from
slab?
So like different stages of the construction, you have them go in and you check.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so important. And people don't know that they can do that. The builder's not going to tell you you can do that. That's why you need to have a real estate agent that's going to represent you. And it's the same problem when we're talking about the NAR lawsuit about buyers who now, if they're responsible for paying their buyer's agent commission, potentially if the seller's not willing to pay. Say you're in a highly competitive bidding situation. A lot of buyers are going to think, oh, I don't have to pay. They don't have to pay a buyer's agent. Then, you know, I'll go straight to the listing agent. I'm going to save some money. I'm going to get this house. But are they? You know, they're not going to have any representation and it's going to be tough. But there's people who are going to be pushed to that. And it's sad. But that's why I'm doing this podcast, because I want people to be informed and know what they don't know and be able to ask good questions, even if they are in that scenario.
And have a good resource, a good information that is accurate.
Right.
It's because like you're going to go and you're going to start Googling, your finger hurts, and then you go on WebMD and you go down a rabbit hole. And then like before you know it, you're like diagnosing yourself with something. It's the same thing with real estate. As a kid, my mom, thankfully, like she's been a blessing. But as a kid, I would watch TLC's Trading Spaces, and my mom worked, and she would come home and I'd rearrange all the furniture. And I mean, I was not watching Nickelodeon. I was like watching, HGTV
all day long.
And so I was like, oh, I'm going to get my real estate license, and get into the real estate industry because of that. It is nothing like HGTV. It is nothing like, Bravo. It's nothing like any of that stuff. It's very difficult. And so when you're going online and you're seeing these things of what you think real estate is like, it's really not. And that's why there's a lot under the iceberg, that is there for support. And you need to find an agent that aligns with you, your goals, what you want, what you believe in, whatever it is, because it's just, you have your best interest.
Yeah, you need somebody that's going to stand in the gap for you with what you don't know and protect you. That's essentially what a good real estate agent is going to do, and help you make really good financial decisions for your family, for your future. I don't know what's going to happen with the NAR lawsuit. I know that Steven and I are going to be here well after all that stuff's passed, and there are going to be so many good agents out there ready and willing to support you through your next purchase. Plan to be able to financially afford an agent if you have to. Set yourself up for success, guys, because this is such an important decision, and you need people in your corner who are going to keep you safe, who are going to think about you and be there alongside you. And I said this in the first episode. I said, there's lots of people out there who could DIY a haircut, but there's most of us should not. And real estate, it's way more permanent and expensive than fixing a bad haircut. Yeah. Fixing a bad real estate deal is way more difficult.
Yeah. And also having an agent, because right now it's more important to have an agent than ever because things are changing so quickly.
Right.
And it's not just the NAR settlement that everyone keeps on talking about. It's insurance. There's all these other like flood zone maps. There's all these zoning laws, of short-term rentals. We talked about that huge as well. There's all these different things, from an investor standpoint. Are you going to be getting an area that, could allow short-term rentals, and it ends up changing. Exactly. And then your whole investment and your numbers
doesn't even work.
Doesn't work. So there's all these different things that as a full-time agent that I do is I time block my day, and I spend a good chunk of it, at least 15 to 30 minutes a day looking at what's going on in the news, what's going on from reputable resources, what's going on in that. And that's why I'm really happy you have this specific platform. Even for me, I go and I look at stuff, and then I have to verify.
Yeah, we always,
because I'm like, I thought this was a reputable source. And
yeah,
I'm
we trust, but we have to verify.
And verify.
Yeah, trust but verify, fact check things. So if you guys don't take anything from this podcast, I hope you guys understand the importance of not just falling into a real estate deal with an agent, that you will go out there and interview some people, man. Go and do your due diligence. Take it seriously. This is the biggest investment most people will ever make in their lives. And having a good real estate agent can make home buying a freaking amazing experience. Or it can make it an absolute nightmare if you don't have the right one. And it costs you a ton of money. Yeah. So we want to set you up for success. If there's anything Steven and I can do to help you, support you, answer any questions, we're going to have all our contact info in the description. But Steven, is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
From an agent standpoint, because I know we have an agent following, and I hope that other agents learned from this podcast as well, just equally as much as buyers. I hope you took away some nuggets. And if you did, message us and let us know that you took away something, and that helps you become a better agent by learning and just listening to this. You're taking that one step of bettering yourself. So thank you so much for having me on here.
This was so much fun. Love you too.
Yes.
Thanks guys for watching. If you want to catch some more great info, please like and subscribe. Please continue to follow the channel. We have some great new info coming, and we'll keep you from getting screwed in your next deal. So keep watching, guys. Have a great week.
Take care.